Welcome to a special edition of Heart Rhythm TV Breaking News, the CMS Cuts 2023. I'm Roderick Tung. As all of you know, this has been a very emotional month since July 8th, when CMS announced the potential proposed cuts to SVT, VT, and atrial fibrillation ablation. This is unprecedented. It's hard to justify, and it's hard for us to wrap our head around, particularly when just the year before there were already cuts made. We will not stand for this, and Heart Rhythm Society has been fighting the scenes every single day since the announcement. On July 18th, the Society met with the leadership of ACC to be able to strategize the best response with our advocates, with the ACC and the AMA. There was an emergency board meeting called by Andrew Kahn on Zoom, which was then used to design a strategy to potentially hire a lobbying or advocacy firm, which is different than the path we took last year. Then the search began, and then officially today, I'm pleased to announce that we hired Capital Counsel as an advocacy firm to be able to act upon our best interests as a lobbying and advocacy firm, and they are DC based. Shortly after this, we announced a strategy advisor task force led by Jody Hurwitz. DJ Lockeretti will be leading this as well, and we will have an all hands on deck in terms of what our response should be. It was also very apparent to us that we have not been communicating our response and our strategy that's been ongoing behind the scenes. And we had a leadership meeting to talk about the need for weekly Heart Rhythm TV. Shortly after this, we came out with Advocacy in Action, with Jody Hurwitz hosting both David Slotweiner and Chris Liu to talk about the mechanisms of the RUC, how we got here, and what we're doing about it. And then Andrew Cron came on Twitter to talk about the pain that's felt across the society and the advocacy that's necessary to fight this together. I'm pleased that we're going to be having weekly updates on Heart Rhythm TV, and we're also going to be featuring voices of the membership. And today I have a very special guest, Scott Greenberg, who led a grassroots movement on Twitter because of his discontent, because of his anger and his frustration that we all share, and was able to host a Discord meeting of 125 people that were interested just to be able to be heard, to be able to have radical ideas last Monday. Scott, welcome to the show. And in this next segment called Voices, we really want to amplify many of the voices and the emotions that are felt by our members of the Heart Rhythm Society. I'm really excited to have Scott Greenberg on Heart Rhythm TV with us, who's a solo EP private practice doc in North Houston. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Rod. I appreciate you having me on this episode, and looking forward to being here and chatting with you.
Well, July 8th comes out and CMS announces this. What are the first questions when you hear this? How does this affect your practice?
Well, I think the first time I found out about it was actually the following day, and somehow I came across something on Twitter, and the initial reaction was disbelief that there's no possible way that this could be happening again. And then you dig into it a little bit more and realize that this is actually fact, and CMS is planning on cutting reimbursement for ablations again. And the initial reactions are always anger, and then as you kind of wait it out, you wonder, after having gone through what we went through last year, is someone going to speak out? And it's one of those things that someone's got to do it, and the word needed to be out. And by the time I started speaking with people, even a week later, a lot of the EPs had no clue. And I think there are probably still people in our community who don't understand what exactly is going to transpire starting in 2023.
And I think you were not alone to say, what is Heart Rhythm Society going to do differently this time around? And you certainly started leading a grassroots movement that ended up with Brett Gidney on Discord. Do you want to describe how that evolved organically?
The initial thing that I did was trying to understand the situation. I have no personal history in politics or lobbying, and it turns out my anesthesiologist for my ablations is the president of the Texas Medical Board. So I actually reached out to him and asked who I could possibly speak with through in our state in regards to the process and what we need to understand as electrophysiologists. And ended up connecting me with the president of Texas ACC and the incoming president of the Texas Medical Association. And I started an email chain basically with about 15 EPs from Houston and Austin, and with those folks, including one of the lobbyists in our state who actually pushed through tort reform, to understand what is going on and what kind of impact that we can make. And as it kind of started from there, it certainly ballooned because the word had gotten out and more people wanted to be involved, to the point where sending out emails was really no longer a viable solution. And we needed a better way to connect. And so that's initially where that started.
So I was there, Scott, on this Discord conversation, which happened this last night. What was the temperature? What was the tone? What were the takeaways from this?
I think like my initial reaction, I think what I got out of it first was, initially there's a lot of anger. How could this have happened? How could have someone let this happen? Why have we been so powerless in this situation? And then you get more of the sense as everyone lets out their frustration, it's more of a sense of helplessness and really despair, because we have worked so hard to where we have gotten. We are literally the longest training field in medicine, 8 years after medical school. And what we do is very intense. And we have a highly defined skill set. And to see an attack on our field by people who don't necessarily understand what we do really has left a lot of people blown away, and really a concern for the future of our field.
Well, I think if anyone that's an electrophysiologist doesn't feel like this is devaluing our field or demeaning or degrading it, then they don't know what's happening. Because anytime you spend that time and the amount of effort it takes to orchestrate an ablation, particularly when ablation, the data for it is getting stronger and stronger for ablation, with even harder outcomes like hospitalization, quality of life and mortality, and AFib with heart failure, and even early VT. It's really confusing to see, this level. We understand that all physicians are always going to be under the scrutiny. Spine has their issues, ortho has their issues, ophthalmology does. But this one really seems like it follow the recommendations of the RUC.
Well, and that's the thing, is that not only is there's a complete disconnect between RUC and CMS. If anyone has actually read the document that CMS released, there really is no explanation in regards to their RVU values minus time. All right. So they didn't follow RUC recommendations. And then you read the explanations, and they're basically basing everything off of an SCT ablation and adding a few additional work RVUs, whether it's AFib or ventricular tachycardia. You do the math, and basically what you can do is divide the RVUs that they are giving by the time that they think the procedure is taking. And we've basically been reduced to, for an AFib and VT ablation, about 3.5 work RVUs per hour. Now, by no means is this an attack on anyone else in the cardiology field, but I use this example because it's what cardiologists understand. 3.5 RVUs per hour is essentially equivalent to reading 3 transthoracic echocardiograms, or reading 20 EKGs, or really seeing 1 to 2 consults in the hospital. And the one thing that CMS has not put into their algorithm is the intensity of the work. And no one can argue that the VT ablation is one of the most complex and intense procedures that you can do in medicine. Persistent AFibs that are redos are equally as intense, and it's really been devalued to the point that there's a concern for those of us doing ablations in the future.
I also think that we as a society, or as electrophysiologists, we don't get trained in activism and advocacy. Obviously, we're all amateur in terms of how to politically navigate this, but it is an all hands on deck situation. And I think you're a role model in some way. Some might say you're a renegade because he's starting his own grassroots. But I think we need to be doing this in parallel. We need more Scott Greenbergs who are vocal, who are able to express their frustrations, but then try to unite the members and people. And that's what you did. There were over 120 people that joined in an organic forum. And I think the discussions were very healthy.
I think, listen, we had a lot of important people on that phone call. We had 120 people on a Zoom call, and our Discord channel, we've got over 200 electrophysiologists. I think the one positive that I've seen through all of this is that People are motivated. This time is different than last. This is people's livelihood. And the fact of the matter is well, just like you said, we're trained as doctors. You know, why aren't we taught business in medical school? I don't know. We're certainly not taught lobbying and politics and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is we're smart, we can figure this out and we can do it. And like you said, we have to unite. This can't be a split front. We have to do this together. We just need the organization and the leadership to kind of guide us through this.
Yeah, and the sense of urgency rings through everyone in Heart Rhythm Society. And that's why we're having a weekly cadence for all this. Scott, everyone wants to know, what do we do now? You don't have all the answers. We know that. I'm not putting you on the spot. But what would you like to see done? Heart Rhythm Society has officially contracted and established a lobbyist firm that's going to be advocating on our behalf today, which is official. What else do you want to see done, and what are you doing locally?
So, you know, that is what we've got to figure out. You know, the fact of the matter is, you know, we have received emails from ACC and HRS asking us to write letters. You know, it's necessary, but the reality is no one's going to read those emails. All right.
We have to do it to check the boxes, and it would be a shame to not have people do it. So we have to do it. But what else do we need to do?
You have to do it. You know, the fact of the matter is, I think this there's two things that we can do. I think lobbying is the most important. All right. So hiring a lobbying firm is key. And the fact of the matter is they need to have connections within Washington, because we need to get to the people who make these kind of big time decisions. And if HRS has got a lobbying firm, you know, certainly we have talked from our grassroots movement in regards to fundraising and getting our own lobbying firm. But, you know, I'm not convinced that the best goal in all of this is to try to reverse these cuts to the RUC recommendations. Fact of the matter is, I've talked to many people who took that survey and they're still confused about what they filled out because of all the convoluted questions. I quite frankly think that this needs to go full reversal, because we already took a 35% hit next year or last year. We certainly can't take another 15 to 20% this year. So I think we need leadership. I think we need some organization, and I think we need to get people together in person and go to battle, quite frankly.
Well, and I think what this has awoken is obviously a sense of, we need to figure out some sort of stopgap measure here, but we also need a long-term strategy of continuing to have the dialogue, continue to have this discussion, because then what is it for next year? What's it for the year after? You know, how do we dissociate this ablation from the monocular view of just lens of time?
Right.
And how do we convince that this is also a specialized skill set, the technology, the setup,
Yeah,
and then obviously the risk to the patient?
Yeah, listen, you know, electrophysiology is, you know, it's amazing what we do. If you think about exactly what we're doing as electrophysiologists, going into people's hearts and fixing abnormal heart rhythms, I mean, that's as intense as it comes. And the fact of the matter is we need to let CMS know that this is not all about time. All right. We have proven that AFib ablations keep certain subpopulations of people. There's a mortality benefit. It keeps people out of the hospital. It's certainly the best thing we've got to make people feel better. No one needs to discuss, you know, why VT ablation is important. People come into the hospital and they are literally dying in front of you, and you give them the opportunity to potentially walk out of that hospital. So the way that they develop these algorithms, it just needs to be looked upon from a different perspective. Now, you know, I think because we're doctors and we're so busy with work that there's kind of this fatalistic mindset that this was some kind of preordained cut that none of us have power over. But the fact of the matter, that's just not true. This has happened to other specialties within medicine, and they have successfully fought this. Now, our challenge is that we're a small field. There's about 2,000 EPs from what I've been told. And so that means we have to do more work. But certainly, I think we have the motivation to get something done and fight this.
Well, Scott, you're an exemplary member of Heart Rhythm Society. You're leading the grassroots. For those that are part of this, want to be part of this grassroots, you know, follow Scott with Discord and stay in the conversation. Do what Scott's been doing, which is to be active politically, locally. Try to get in touch with anyone that may have some direction or experience in being able to change this. That's what we're certainly doing on our end. It's an all hands on deck situation because EP is under siege. And we care deeply about this profession and it's very sad to see what's happening here. And it's disheartening is the right way. But Scott, thank you for joining us. Keep your efforts high, keep the voices loud, and we're with you on this.
All right, well, I appreciate you having me, and certainly anybody who needs to reach out, please feel free.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.